I'm still going through it, still dealing with the house hunt. It's just like it's gonna be like an issue until I get it resolved. And yeah, the camera's not working on YouTube, so I'm just gonna go without it. All right, I'll be finishing chapter 9 today, and then chapters 10 and 11 next week. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the book. And while I'm waiting, I will get a drink of water, so stand by. Okay, I'm back. All right, I will get right to it today because I'm getting kind of honestly just fed up with this book. I'm dealing with a bunch of other stuff right now, IRL, like considering going back to grad school, dealing with the move, dealing with the new job. Like it's like 101 Dalmatian things right now. So that's why I'm just like, all right, let's just push through this week, next week, finish out this book, and then I'm gonna give it back to the birdhouse library I got it from. Because I mean, as far as the books go, this book is like 4, maybe 5 out of 10. It's just a little bit too wordy to be a good book, in my opinion. Like it's like humblingly mediocre. And as I've said before, like one of my main criticisms of the book is it highlights all the problems with medicine in general, like the medical field, doctors, science. They all act like they're better than everybody else because they're experts. Because they know what pulmonary stenosis is and no one else does, and they can go, haha, I know what it is and you don't. Like, dude, just get out of here with that. Like, as I said before, like, I don't care if you went to school for 20 years to get your medical degree. Like, I really don't care. Don't act like you're better than me just because of that. Okay? I really don't care if you're making like bank. You're paid like a valued member of society. When really everyone should. Congress, politicians, just no one can get their act together long enough for pay to be fair and equitable. So let's just finish out this book, like I said. Remainder of chapter 9, and then I'll finish out the remaining 2 chapters next week. And then that will be it for their house rules. And not only that, but it does extend to the characters too, right? Like Meanie Hyde. Who's Meanie Hyde? Who's Deborah Pettigrew? Like, unless it's those main characters like Homer, right? Candy, Wally, Olive, Larch. Unless it's one of those main characters, like it's very hard to know. It's like Mr. Rose. Like, who is Mr. Rose? Like, it's hard to keep track of all these characters. It's the reason why, like, I might have to do, like I was saying, a recap at the end of the book series, just like as a brief overview of the characters, kind of like a spark notes, I guess. I'm going to turn on the light too because light is fading here, and I want to be able to see what's on the page. So hold on tight. All right, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm aware there is no video. It's because my laptop it does not have video. This HP, get it together. Do better. I don't know why a computer that is 1 year old doesn't have video with the built-in webcam. That does not make sense to me. When again, I have a Lenovo Y50 that's pushing 10 years old and it's got a working webcam. How and in what world does that make sense? If you are a computer manufacturer, focus on craftsmanship. There is no substitute for quality work. None. In any industry, quality comes first. And if you don't have quality, don't build it. Don't make it. Don't waste customer time. Cheap, made in China, crapola, as you might call it. Junk that stops turning on after 2 years. Junk with cameras that fail left, right, and center. Like, this is not good product. A 1 year warranty does not communicate confidence in your product. Is you do not stand by your product. Stand by your product. It's not hard. Okay, but anyway, let's get into the book. Chapter 9. I'm picking up on the second half of chapter 9, by the way. Exactly where we left off yesterday. You can find, I believe, every chapter except 2, 3, and 4 on YouTube because 2, 3, and 4 did not have good audio. So I ended up just doing a recap of those episodes. Okay. All right. Minnie Hyde's wife, Florence, was delivered of a healthy baby boy, 9 pounds, 2 ounces, shortly after Thanksgiving, which Olive Worthington and Raymond Kendall celebrated in a fairly formal and quiet fashion at Ocean View. Olive invited all her Apple workers for an open house. She asked Ray to help her host the occasion. Minnie Hyde insisted to Olive that his new baby was a definite sign that Wally was alive. Yes, I know he's alive, Olive told Minnie calmly. It was not too trying a day for her, but she did find Deborah Pettigrew sitting on Homer's bed in Wally's room, staring at the photograph of Candy teaching Homer how to swim. Not long after ushering Deborah from the room, Olive discovered Grace Lynch sitting in the same dent Deborah had made on Homer's bed. Grace, however, was staring at the questionnaire from the Board of Trustees at St. Cloud's, the one that Homer had never filled out and had left tacked to the wall of Wally's room as if they were unwritten rules. And Big Dot Taft broke down in the kitchen while telling Olive about one of her dreams. Everett had found her, in her sleep, dragging herself across the bedroom floor toward the bathroom. He didn't have no legs, Big Dot told Olive. It was the night Florence's boy was born, and I woke up without no legs, only I didn't really wake up. I was just dreaming that there was nothing left of me below the waist. Except he had to go to the bathroom, Everett Taft pointed out. Otherwise, why was you crawling on the floor? The important thing was that I was injured, Big Dot told her husband crossly. Oh, said Everett Taft. Point is, Minnie Hyde said to Olive, my baby was born just fine, but Big Dot had a dream that she couldn't walk. Don't you see, Olive? Minnie asked. I think God is telling us that Wally's okay. He's alive, but that he's been hurt. He's injured or something, Big Dot said, bursting into tears. Of course, Olive said abruptly, that's what I've always thought. Her words startled them all, even Ray Kendall. If we weren't injured, we would have heard it from him by now. I mean, he probably would have made his way back if he was okay, right? If he weren't alive, I'd know it, Olive said. She handed her handkerchief to Big Dot Taft and lit a fresh cigarette from the butt end of the cigarette she'd almost finished. I mean, it's not like people to just give up on searching for their loved ones. And Wally's not that type of character anyway. Like, if he were alive, he would find his way back to Olive and Candy, no doubt about it. Thanksgiving at St. Cloud's was not nearly so mystical, and the food wasn't as good, but everyone had a good time. In lieu of balloons, Dr. Larch distributed prophylactics to Nurse Angela and Nurse Edna, who, despite their distaste for the job, inflated the rubbers and dipped them in bowls of green and red food coloring. When the coloring dried, Mrs. Grogan painted the orphans' names on the rubbers. Homer and Candy hid the brightly colored prophylactics all over the orphanage. It's a rubber hunt, said Wilbur Larch. We should have saved the idea for Easter. Eggs are expensive. Crude, but okay. We'll not give up eggs for Easter, Wilbur, Nurse Edna said indignantly. I suppose not, Dr. Larch said tiredly. Olive Worthington had sent a case of champagne. Wilbur Larch had never drunk a drop of champagne before. He was not a drinker. The way the bubbles tightened the roof of his mouth, opened his nasal passages and made his eyes feel dry but clear, reminded him of the lightest of vapors, of that famous inhalation he was addicted to. He drank and drank. He even sang for the children, something he heard the French soldiers sing in World War I. The song was no more suitable for children than those prophylactics were, but because of an ignorance of French and an innocence of sex, the French song, which was filthier than any limerick Wally Worthington could ever know, was mistaken for a pleasing ditty, and the green and red rubbers were mistaken for balloons. Ah, the innocence of youth. Hello, Emily. Thank you all for watching, by the way. And thank you all for any support the show receives. If you watch, like, comment, follow, I love it. Donate. Stormer Show. You're doing great. Hunter suddenly got a little drunk. Champagne was new to her too, although sometimes she put sherry in hot soup. Nurse Angela didn't drink, but she became emotional, to the degree which she threw her arms around Homer's neck and kissed him mightily, all the while claiming that the spirit of St. Cloud's had been in a noticeable slump during Homer's absence. And Homer had been sent by a clearly sympathetic God to revive them. I think it was more so Homer's willingness to continue to do good, to continue to be useful in his own words. He got tired just sitting around Ocean View, romancing Candy or, you know, yeah, that's pretty much all he really did, right? Making love, which I mean isn't a bad way to live, but I think Homer just wanted again to be more like socially active, basically. That's why he went back to St. Cloud's. Homer's not staying. Homer Large said, hiccuping. We'd all been impressed with Candy, whom even Dr. Large referred to as our angelic volunteer, over whom Mrs. Grogan daily fussed as if Candy were her daughter. Nurse Edna buried herself around the young lovers the way a moth wraps around a lion. On Thanksgiving Day, Dr. Larch even flirted with Candy, alone. I never saw such a pretty girl who was willing to give enemas, Larch said, patting Candy's knee. I'm not squeamish, Candy told him. There's no room for squeamishness here, Larch said, burping. There's still a little room for sensitivity, I hope, Nurse Angela complained. Larch had never praised her or Nurse Edna for their willingness to give enemas. Of course, I wanted him to go to medical school to be a doctor, to come back and relieve me here, Larch told Candy in a loud voice, as if Homer weren't sitting right across the table. Larch patted Candy's knee again. That's all right, he said. Who wouldn't rather get a girl like you pregnant and go Apples? Said something in French and drank another glass of champagne. Of course, whispered Candy. He doesn't need to go to medical school to be a doctor here. Just don't tell. There's just a few more procedures he ought to be familiar with. Hell, Larch said, indicating the orphans eating their turkey, each with a colored rubber like a name tag stationed in front of his or her plate. This isn't a bad place to raise a family. And if Homer ever gets around to planting the damn hillside, you'll get to grow apples here too. When Dr. Larch fell asleep at the table, Homer Wells carried him back to the dispensary. In his time away from St. Cloud's, Homer wondered, had Dr. Larch gone completely crazy? There was no one to ask. Mrs. Grogan, Nurse Edna, and especially Nurse Angela might agree that Larch had traveled around the bend. But he had one oar out of the water, as Ray Kendall would say, and he had one wheel in the sand, as Wally used to say. But Mrs. Grogan and the nurses would most emphatically defend Dr. Larch. Their view, Homer could tell, was that Homer had left them for too long, that his judgment was rusty. Fortunately, Homer's obstetrical procedure had not suffered from his absence. I mean, you cut the guy some slack. He's like over 70 at this point in the story, right? He's getting old, and he's been performing abortions for years, basically. Even women have no respect for holidays. Trains run at different times, but they run. It was after 6 in the evening when the woman arrived at St. Cloud's, although it was not his usual practice. The station master escorted her to the hospital entrance because the woman was already engaged in the second stage of labor. Her membranes were ruptured, and her bearing down pains were at regular intervals. Homer Wells was palpitating the baby's head through the perineum when Nurse Angela informed him that Dr. Larch was too drunk to be aroused, and Nurse Edna had also fallen asleep. Homer was concerned that the perineum showed signs of bulging, and the woman's response to rather heavy ether sedation was quite slow. Homer was obliged to hold back the infant's head in order to protect the perineum from tearing. The lateral incision, which Homer elected to perform, was made at a point corresponding to 7 on the face of a clock. It was a safer episiotomy in Homer's view because the cut could, if necessary, be carried back considerably farther than the midline of the operation. Immediately after the birth of the head, Homer slipped his finger around the neck of the child to see if the umbilical cord was coiled down. It was an easy birth, both shoulders emerging spontaneously. He applied 2 ligatures to the umbilical and cut the cord between the 2. He still had his surgical gown on when he went to the dispensary to see how Dr. Larch was recovering from his Thanksgiving Day champagne. If Larch was familiar with the transitions he encountered in moving from a world of ether to a world without anesthesia, he was unfamiliar with the transition between drunkenness and hangover. Seeing Homer Wells in the bloody smock of his business, Wilbur Larch imagined he was saved. Ah, Dr. Stone, he said, extending his hand to Homer with a self-congratulatory formality famous among colleagues in the medical profession. Doctor who? Said Wells. Dr. Stone, said Wilbur Larch, withdrawing his hand, his hangover settling on him. Dust so thick on the roof of his mouth that he could only repeat himself. Fuzzy Stone, Fuzzy Stone, Fuzzy Stone. Homer? Andy asked when they lay together in one of the twin beds given them in their room for the girls' division. Why would Dr. Large say that you don't need to go to medical school to be a doctor here? Maybe he means that half the work here is illegal anyway, said Homer Wells. So what's the point of being a legitimate doctor? Not every place required a piece of paper to work there. Okay. My more cynical side. Some jobs you could do without a fancy piece of paper. No one would hire you if you weren't a legitimate doctor, would they? Candy asked. Maybe Dr. Large would, said Homer Wells. I know some things. You don't want to be a doctor here anyway, do you? Candy asked. That's right, I don't want to, he said. What is all this about Fuzzy Stone? He was wondering as he fell asleep. Homer was still asleep when Dr. Large bent over the Thanksgiving woman and examined the episiotomy. Episiotomy, hopefully I'm saying that right. I guess I can look it up. Episiotomy. I just need this.
Episiotomy.
Episiotomy. It's an incision, basically. Don't hunt me down, okay? I only Google it because it's in the book, okay? I don't know, man. I'm not a doctor. I'm just reading this book. And I do wonder sometimes, like, I'm sure there are doctors out there who don't know what an episiotomy is. They're like, what? I'm a brain surgeon. I don't know anything about that. Right. Nurse Angela was telling him about it, stitch by stitch, but although Archer appreciated the description, it wasn't really necessary. The look and feel of the woman's healthy tissue told him everything he wanted to know. That's an interesting research topic, right? On the specificity of human knowledge. Luckily, no one will witness to my genius because I have 0 viewers on TikTok, which yahoo. But what I mean by that is humans as a whole, we have what are called SMEs, subject matter experts. And that's the reason why there are specializations in medicine, like brain doctor, heart surgeon, pediatrician, because there's so much to know. There's no one person alive who can know everything. It's simply not possible. Even the experts don't know everything. The specificity of human knowledge. You can quote me on that. Wells had not lost his confidence. He still had the correct touch. I think I skipped something. Nurse Angela was telling him about it stitch by stitch, but although Larch appreciated the description, it wasn't really necessary. Look and feel of the woman's healthy tissue told him everything he wanted to know. Wells had not lost his confidence. He still had the correct touch. He also possessed the self-righteousness of the young and wounded. Wells had no doubts to soften his contempt for people who bungled their lives so badly that they didn't want the children they conceived. Larch would have to would have told him that he was simply an arrogant young doctor who had never been sick, that he was guilty of a young doctor's disease, manifesting a sick superiority toward all patients. Homer was wielding an ideal of marriage and family like a club. He was more sure of the rightness of his goal than a couple celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary. He must have imagined that the sacredness with which he viewed his union with Candy would hover like a halo above the young couple and shed a conspicuously forgiving light upon them and their child when they returned to Heart's Haven and Heart's Rock. He must have thought that the goodness of his and Candy's intentions would glow with such a powerful radiance that Olive and Ray and the rest of the all-knowing say-nothing community would be blinded. Homer and Candy must have envisioned that their child, conceived in a moment of love that overshadowed Wally's being lost or dead, or just missing, would be greeted as a descending angel. I mean, the sense of betrayal for Olive would probably be tangible if she knew the truth. It would be palpable. Although, like I was alluding to in the previous episode, I don't personally blame Candy because I mean, chime in the comments too if you're there. Should widowers stay single? Should widows and widowers stay single? That was like the $1 million question yesterday. I personally think they don't need to. If you want to find love again, if you can in this like cruel, lonely world, I say go for it. Like, and if other people don't like it, who cares? It's not the relationship. Haters are gonna hate, and I'm not gonna be one of them too. I mean, good for you if you can find love. Good for you. All right. Where am I? Think let's see. And so they enjoyed the life of a young married couple that winter in St. Cloud's. Never had being of use been such good fun. There was no chore the lovely and growing pregnant young woman thought herself to be above. Beauty and her physical energy were inspiring to the girls in the girls' division. Mr. Larch devoted himself to teaching Homer more about pediatrics, so he could find no fault with Homer's obstetrical procedure, since Homer was emphatic about his refusal to participate in the abortions. The rigidity of this latter position perplexed even Candy, who was fond of saying to Homer, "Just explain it to me again. You're not disapproving of the procedure, but you will not party to what you feel is wrong." "Right," said Homer Wells. He had no doubts. "You've got it. There's nothing else to explain. I think an abortion should be available to anyone who wants one, but I never want to perform one. What's hard to understand about that?" "Nothing," Candy said. Should we keep asking him about it? You think it's wrong. You think it should be legal, right? Right, said Homer Wells. I think it's wrong, but I also think it should be everyone's personal choice. What could be more personal than deciding whether you want a child or not? And again, it kind of touches base on how I was commenting on the widower question. It's like, is it really your business? Any man out there, is it really your business? Unless it's your child, like, is it really your business? Not really, no, it's not. It's not your business, so, you know, look to what you know. Stop telling other people how to live their lives. Is that all that hard? Okay, anyway. I don't know, Candy said, although it occurred to her that she and Homer Mills had decided that Wally was dead, which seemed especially personal to her. In her fifth month, they began sleeping in separate beds, but they drew beds together and attempted to make them up as if they were one big bed, a problem since there were no double bed sheets at St. Cloud's. Mrs. Grogan wanted to make a present of double bed sheets to Homer and Candy, but she had no money of her own to buy them. She wondered if purchasing them for the orphanage would seem strange. Very strange, Lurch said, vetoing the idea. In other parts of the world, they have double bed sheets, wrote Old Larch in a brief history of St. Cloud's. Here in St. Cloud's, we do without. We just do without. Yet it was the best Christmas ever in St. Cloud's. Olive sent so many presents, and Candy's example, as the first happily pregnant woman in any of their memories, was a present to them all. A turkey and a ham, and Dr. Larch and Homer Wells had a carving contest, which everyone said Homer won. He finished carving the turkey before Larch finished carving the ham. Well, turkeys are easier to cut than pigs, Larch said. Secretly, he was very pleased with Homer's knife work. And Homer had learned his touch for cutting under circumstances different from Mr. Rose's was often on Homer's mind. Given certain advantages of education, Homer thought Mr. Rose might have made an excellent surgeon. Might have made, Homer mumbled to himself. He had never been happier. He was of use, he was in love, and was loved, and he was expecting a child. What more is there, he thought, making the daily rounds? Other people may look for a break from routine, but an orphan craves daily life. In midwinter, in a blizzard, when the women were having tea in the girls' division with Mrs. Grogan and Dr. Larch was at the railroad station, personally accusing the station master of losing an expected delivery of sulfa, a woman arrived at the hospital entrance, bent double with cramps and bleeding. It had the D without the C, as Nurse Carolyn would have observed. Whoever had managed the dilatation appeared to have managed it safely. What was required now was a complete curettage, which Homer performed alone. A very small piece of the products of conception was recognizable in the scraping, which caused Homer Wells a single small thought. About 4 months was what he estimated. Looking quickly at the piece and quickly throwing it away. The night when he touched Candy without waking her up, he marveled at how peacefully she slept, and he observed how life in St. Cloud seemed timeless, placeless, and constant. How it seemed grim but caring. How it seemed someone safer than life in Heart's Rock or Heart's Haven. Certainly safer than life over Burma. That was the night he got up and went to the boys' division. Perhaps he was looking for his history in the big room where all the boys slept. What he found instead was Dr. Larch kissing every boy late good night. Homer imagined then that Dr. Larch had kissed him like that when he'd been small. Homer could not have imagined how those kisses, even now, were still kisses meant for him. They were kisses seeking Homer Wells. That was the same night when he saw the lynx on the barren, unplanted hillside, glazed with snow that had thawed and then refrozen into thick dust. Homer had stepped outside for just a minute. After witnessing the kisses, he desired bracing air. It was a Canada lynx, a dark gunmetal gray against the lighter gray of the moonlit snow. Its wildcat stench so strong, Homer gagged to smell the thing. Its wildcat sense was keen enough to keep it treading within a single leap's distance of the safety of the woods. Lynx was crossing the brow of the hill when it began to slide. Its claws cutting through the crust of the snow, and the hill had suddenly grown steeper. The rat moved from the dull moonlight into the sharper light from Nurse Angela's office window. It could not help its sideways descent. It traveled closer to the orphanage than it would ever have chosen to come, its ferocious death smell clashing with the freezing cold. Lynx's helplessness on the ice had rendered its expression both terrified and resigned. Its madness and fatalism were caught in the cat's fierce yellow eyes. Its involuntary spitting cough as it slid on, actually bumping against the hospital before its claws could find a purchase on the crusted snow. It spit its rage at Homer Wells as if Homer had caused its unwilling descent. Its breath had frozen on its chin whiskers and its tufted ears were beaded with ice. The panicked animal tried to dash up the hill. It was less than halfway up when it began to slide down again, drawn toward the orphanage against its will. Again, just like most laborious descriptions, probably of any writer. Like, do we really need to know the life story of this random wild cat? Really? Lynx. Anyway, let's read on about it because it's so fascinating. It's all zero of my viewers. Let's start off from the bottom of the hill a second time. The lynx was panting. It ran diagonally uphill, slipping but catching itself and slipping again, finally escaping into a softer snow in the woods. Nowhere near where it had meant to go. The lynx would accept any route of escape from the dark hospital. Homer Wells, staring into the woods after the departed lynx, did not imagine that he would ever leave St. Cloud's more easily. I think the phrase coming to my mind is like self-congratulatory. Like he's patting himself on the back for using so many words in such elaborate description. Like it's just very detailed. Yeah, I don't know. There's a fall spring every early that March. All over Maine, the river ice speckled under the wet snow. Ponds split apart with gunshots sharp enough to put birds to wing, and the bigger inland lakes groaned and sang and cracked like boxcars colliding in the station yards. In the apartment she shared with Lorna and Bath, Melanie was awakened by the Kennebec. Its ice bending underfoot of slush, giving way with deep gonging alarm that caused one of the older women in the boarding house to sit up in her bed and howl. Melanie was reminded of the nights in her bed in the girls' division at St. Cloud's when the March ice was grinding down river from 3 Mile Falls. Got out of bed. I went into Lorna's room to talk. Lorna was so sleepy that she wouldn't get up. Melanie got in bed beside her friend. It's just the ice, Lorna whispered. That was how she and Melanie became lovers, listening to the fall spring. There's just one thing, Lorna said to Melanie. We're going to be together. You gotta stop looking for this Homer character. Either you want me or you want him. Monogamy. I want you, Melanie told Lorna. Just don't ever leave me. Seriously, Homer's already moved on. Like, you don't have to wait for him anymore, even if you are wanting to be monogamous. Like, I would not recommend keep chasing after Homer Wells because Homer's already moved on. He's with Candy now. Yeah, he's completely moved on from Melanie. A permanent couple and orphan's ideal. Melanie wondered where her rage would go. If she stopped looking for Homer Wells, would she stop thinking about him too? There was too much snow. The brief thaw never penetrated the frozen ground, and when the temperature dropped and it snowed again, the rivers hardened up fast. Mill Mill Pond behind the orphanage in St. Cloud's became a trap for geese. Confused by the thaw, the geese landed on the slush that they mistook for open water. The slush refroze at night, and the geese sprouted and were caught in it. When Homer Wells found the geese, they were frozen statues of their former selves, dusty with the new snow. They were stony guardians of the pond. There's nothing to do but chip them out of the ice and scald them. They were easier to pluck because they were partially frozen. When Mrs. Grogan roasted them, breaking them constantly to bleed their fat, she retained a sense that she was only warming them up for sending them on their dangerous way. It was already April by the time the ice broke free in 3 Mile Falls and the river overran its banks in St. Clouds. The water filled the basement of the former Hoare Hotel and exerted such force against the underbeams that the saloon bar with its brass footrail fell through the floor and floated out and away through the bulkhead. The station master saw it go, as obsessed with omens as he was. He slept 2 nights in a row in his office for fear that the station house was in danger. Annie was so huge she hardly slept at all. The morning that the hill was bare, Homer was tested the ground. He took his spade almost a foot down before he hit frozen earth. He needed another 6 inches of thawing before he could plant apple trees, but he dared not wait any longer before making the trip to Hart's Rock to get the trees. He didn't want to be away when Candy delivered. I mean, it seems like he's not far at all, really. Olive was surprised to see him, and by his request to trade the Cadillac for one of the pickup trucks to transport the baby trees. I want to plant a standard 40x4, Homer told Olive. Half max, about 10% Red Delicious, another 10 or 15% Cortlands and Baldwins. Olive reminded him to throw a few in Northern Spies in, and some Gravensteins for apple pie. She asked him how Candy was and why she hadn't come with him. He told her Candy was too busy. Everyone liked her, and the kids just hung on her. It would be hard to leave when the time came. Homer confided to Olive. They were of so much use. They were so needed. Constancy of the demands. Well, even a day off like this is hard to squeeze in, Homer said. You mean you won't spend the night? Olive asked. Too busy, Homer said, but we will both lack in time to put out the bees. We'll be back in time to put out the bees. It'll be about Mother's Day, Olive observed. Right, said Homer Wells. He kissed Olive, whose skin was cool and smelled like ash. Weenie Hyde and Herb Fowler helped him load the pickup. You gonna plan a whole 40x40 by yourself? Weenie asked him. You better hope the ground unfreezes. You better hope your back holds out, Herb Fowler said. You better hope your pecker don't fall off. How's Candy? Big Dot asked Homer. Almost as big as you are, Homer thought. Burn. Said just fine, he said, but busy. I bet, said Deborah Pettigrew. In the furnace room under the lobster tank, Ray Candle was building his own torpedo. What for? Homer asked. Just to see if I could do it, Ray said. What will you fire it at? Homer asked. What will you fire it from? Hardest part is the gyroscope, Ray said. It ain't hard to fire it. What's hard is guiding it. I don't understand, said Homer Wells. Well, look at you, Ray said. You're planting an apple orchard in an orphanage. You've been there 5 months, but my daughter's too busy to visit me for a day. I don't understand everything either. He's like, Homer, these are torpedoes. These are not human bodies, okay? This is not Grey's Anatomy, okay? That's probably why I don't get it. Like I said, specificity of human knowledge. Which actually, Ray Candle's actually got quite a lot of knowledge. We'll be back about blossom time, Homer said guiltily. That's a nice time of year, said Ray. On the drive back to St. Cloud's, Homer wondered if Ray's coolness or evasiveness was intentional. He decided that Ray's message was clear. If you keep things from me, I won't explain myself to you. Torpedo, Candy said to Homer when he arrived with the baby trees. What for? Wait and see, said Homer Wells. Dr. Larch helped him unload the trees. They're kind of scrawny, aren't they? Larch asked. Don't get much fruit for 8 or 10 years, Homer said. And I doubt I'll get to eat any of it, said Wilbur Larch. Well, Homer said, even before there are apples on the trees, think how the trees will look on the hill. Look scrawny, said Wilbur Larch. Near the top of the hill, the ground was still frozen. Homer couldn't work his spade down far enough. At the bottom, the holes he dug filled with water, thrown off from the snow that was still melting in the woods. Because he would have to wait to plant the trees, he worried about the roots mildewing or getting savage with mice. Mainly, he was peeved that he could not control exactly the calendar of his life. He wanted to plant the trees before Candy delivered. He wanted the hillside entirely planted when the baby was born. Why not just plant in the summertime? I don't know. What did I do to you to make you so compulsively neat? That's what lunch. Surgery is neat, said Homer Wells. It was the middle of April before Homer could dig the holes and plant the 40x40 orchard. Which he did in 3 days, his back so stiff at night that he slept as restlessly and uncomfortably as Candy, tossing and turning with her. It was the first warm night of the spring. They were much too high under the winter weight blanket. When Candy broke water, they both, for a second, confused the puddle with their sweat. Homer helped her to the hospital entrance of the boys' division. He sat and prepared Candy while Homer went to talk to Dr. Larch, who was waiting in Nurse Angela's office. I deliver this one. Clark said, there are certainly advantages to detachment. Others are a bother in the delivery room. You want to be there, just mind your own business. Right, said Elmer Wells. He was fidgeting uncharacteristically, and Dr. Larch smiled at him. Nurse Edna was with Candy, while Nurse Angela scrubbed for Dr. Larch. Homer had already put his mask on when he heard a commotion from the boys' sleeping room. He left the mask on when he went to investigate. One of the John Larches or the Wilbur Larches, he got up and gone outside to pee against a trash barrel with considerable noise. This in turn had disturbed a large raccoon busy at the trash. The raccoon started a peeing orphan into wetting his pajamas. Homer tried to sort this out calmly. He wanted to get back to the delivery room. Being indoors is better at night, he observed to the room at large. Katie's having her baby now. What's she having? One of the boys asked. Either a boy or a girl, said Homer Wells. What will we name it? Another one asked. Nurse Angela named me, Homer said. Me too, several of them said. That's also a pet peeve of mine in books. It's like people are not a hive mind. Okay. That says like virtually never the people respond in unison. Why is it so common in books? Like somehow I seriously doubt John Irving that all of them said me too well at the same time. Like somehow I seriously doubt that. Even like friends that are extremely in tune and like finishing each other's sentences, even they would struggle. Unless they have like some kind of telepathic communication, like telepathic way of communicating, but yeah, that's not the case. Anyway, rant aside. It's a girl, I'll name her Angela, said Homer Wells. And if it's a boy, I'll name him Angel. Ah, very creative, Homer. That's really just Angela without the last A. Ah. Angel? Someone asked. Right, said Homer Wells, and kissed them all good night. As he was leaving, someone asked him, and will you leave me here? No. Homer Wells, having pulled his mat back up. What? He shouted. Again, all of them at the same time? Really? No, said Homer more clearly, pulling down the mask. It was hot in the delivery room. The warm weather had been unexpected because no one had put the screens on. Larch refused to open any windows. The knowledge child, one way or another, would be named after her. Nurse Angela wept so hard that Larch insisted that she change her mask. Her setting was too short to reach the sweat on Larch's forehead. She missed some of it. As the baby's head emerged, a drop of Larch's sweat baptized the child squarely on his temple literally before it was entirely born. I was not thinking this was not unlike a Copperfield Green would call. It looks like there is about, I don't know, like probably like 11 pages left or something like that. Gotta give my hands a break. Arms. Oh yeah, these chapters are long, sons of gun. It's because of all the dialogue, the two Ds, dialogue and description. Irving does not pull any punches, man. He just keeps writing and writing and writing. To a pedantic level where you're just like, dude, just get to the point. Please. Just have Candy deliver the baby, please. We need something to happen. Anyway. When the shoulders did not fall quickly enough to please Larch, he took the chin and pit in both hands and drew the infant downward until, in a single easy upward motion, he delivered the posterior shoulder first. Wells, biting his lip, nodded his approval as the interior shoulder. The rest of the child followed. It's an angel, Nurse Edna announced to Candy, who was still smiling an ether smile. Nurse Angela, who had soaked through another mask, had to turn away. Only after the placenta was born did Larch say, as he sometimes did, perfect. Then, as he never before had done, he kissed Candy, albeit through his mask, squirrely between her wide open, out of ether eyes. The next day it snowed and snowed, an angry April snowstorm, desperate not to relinquish the winter. Homer looked at his newly planted apple orchard with concern. The frail snow-covered trees reminded him of the luckless geese who made an ill-timed landing in the mill pond. Stop worrying about the trees, said Wilbur Larch. They're on their own now. So was Angel Wells, 8 pounds, 7 ounces, and neither an orphan nor an abortion. It's finally a kid that's wanted over here. Only short of May, there was still too much snow in St. Cloud's for it to be mud season yet. Homer Wells had shaken the individual branches of each of his apple trees. The mousetraps around one particularly vulnerable looking orchard And then caused him to scatter poison oats and poison corn. Every tree had a metal sleeve around its slender trunk. He had already nibbled the row of Max planted near his stones. I'm telling you, like, this writing is, it's amazing. Really, it's amazing. I nibbled the row of Max planted nearest the woods. Or put out a salt lick for the deer deeper in the woods in hopes that the salt lick would keep them there. Then he was nursing Angel, whose crafty remnant of an umbilical had fallen off cleanly and whose circumcision had healed. Homer had circumcised his son. You need to practice, Dr. Larch told him. You want me to practice on my son? Homer had asked. It'll be the only pain you ever cause him, Homer Larch replied. There's still ice on the inside of the window panes in the morning. Homer would hold his finger with pain until his fingers got red, wet and cold, and then he'd touch Candy with the finger, which woke her up when she was slow to respond to his gentler touching of her stubble. Homer and Candy loved how they fit together in the bed again, and how Angel could fit between them when Candy was nursing him. Candy's milk would sometimes wake them up before Angel's crying sound. Crying would. They agreed they had never been happier. So what if the sky, when it was almost May, was the state color of February and still streaked with sleet? So what if the secret they kept in St. Cloud's cannot be kept forever? It was already the secret that half of Heart's Haven and Heart's Rock had the sense to figure out for themselves. People from Maine don't crowd you. They let you come to your senses in your own good time. I mean, you would never know that from the raw amount of characters and dialogue in this book. And for two, there's a ritual weighing of Angel Wells, which was, I mean, and there's another character, right? Angel Wells. Add to our, I don't even know what to call it. Just mass of people, like just big old group of people, just giant, huge group. Every 2 days there was a ritual weighing of Angel Wells, which was always conducted in the dispensary. Nurse Angela keeping the record. George and Homer taking turns at poking Angel's belly. Seeing Angel's eyes and feeling Angel's grip. Admit it, Nurse Edna said to Candy and Homer. I want the weighing in ceremony. You like it here. Seriously, how many characters were just in this one paragraph? Let's count. Ready? Angel, 1. Nurse Angela, 2. Arch, 3. Homer, 4. No, 5. Candy, 6. 6 characters for a paragraph that is 6 lines long. Yeah. And I think that's the main problem with the book too. Like, just compare this to any other like great American novel, and it's like, dude, just limit the characters. Limit the characters. That's what you have to do. Because it becomes hard to follow the story too if you have too many characters. The day in St. Cloud's, it was 33 degrees. Wet snow with which the morning had begun had turned to freezing rain. The day in Hart's Rock, Olive Worthington had her own secret. Perhaps if Homer and Candy had been more forthcoming too, but Olive would have shared her secret with them. She would have grabbed the phone and called them. But people from Maine don't like the telephone, rude to mention, especially in the case of important news. The telephone catches you too off guard. The program provides you with a descent, respectful interval in which to gather your senses and respond. Olive sent them her secret in a telegram that gave everyone a little more time. Candy would see the telegram first. She was nursing Angel in the girls' division to quite an appreciative audience of girl orphans. Mrs. Grogan brought her the telegram, which one of the lackeys who slaved for the station master had finally got around to delivering. The telegram was an obvious shock to Candy, who quite abruptly handed Angel to Mrs. Grogan. Although Angel did not appear to be through nursing, it astonished Mrs. Grogan that Candy did not even pause to properly replace her breast in her bra. She just buttoned her blouse over herself. In spite of the weather, ran outdoors and across the hospital entrance of the boys' division. About 11 pages left. Here we go. At the time Homer was asking Dr. Larch if he, Larch thought that an x-ray of his Homer's heart might prove instructive to Homer. Larch was thinking very carefully about his answer when Candy burst upon them. Olive Worthington was a Yankee who knew the price of a telegram, the cost of words, yet her enthusiasm for her subject clearly carried her away. She went far beyond her usual shorthand self. While we found alive, stop. Recovering encephalitis, Ceylon, stop. Liberated from Rangoon, Burma, stop. Temperature 92 degrees, stop. Weight 105 pounds, stop. Paralyzed, stop. Love, Olive. And yeah, I guess that is a possibility I didn't consider too, that while he was just POW, Because it's not necessarily the case that he died if he didn't find his way back. He could have been a prisoner. 305 pounds. Said, well, I mean, this is going to be awkward too while he figures out. And he's getting around. Live, Candy whispered. Paralyzed, Nurse Angela said. Encephalitis, said Wilbur Larch. Could his temperature be 92 degrees? Wilbur, Nurse asked. It's a roll call. 105 pounds, alive, paralyzed, encephalitis. Larch, here. Larch didn't know. He wouldn't venture a guess. Yeah, sometimes you just have to stop and just ask yourself, like, do people really talk like this? People ever talk like this? Really? No, we're close to Halloween. I think it's downright eerie. Downright eerie. What Large didn't know, he wouldn't venture a guess. It was another one of those details, the clarification of which would take quite a long time. For Captain Worthington, who had abandoned his plane over Burma about 10 months ago, the clarification of many such details would take years. He was raining so heavily when he jumped. It seemed to all his parachute had to push against the rain to open. The floor of the plane was so near, while he was afraid he'd pull the cord too soon. He was afraid of the bamboo. He'd heard stories of flowers being impaled by it, but he missed the bamboo and landed in a teak tree, a branch of which separated his shoulder. His head may have hit the trunk, or else the pain in his shoulder caused him to lose consciousness. It was dark when he woke up, and since he couldn't see how far below the ground he was, how below the ground was, he didn't dare to free himself from the chute cords until morning. He used himself too much morphine for his shoulder and lost the syringe in the dark. In his haste to abandon the plane, he not had time to locate a machete. In the morning, he spent quite a while running through the chute cords, using only a bayonet in his ankle sheath and having the use of only one strong arm. And I was going to look that up too, because while he was in the Air Force, it's kind of an unusual place for him to be shot down. Myanmar, Burma is between Thailand and Bangladesh, based on my Google search. So yeah, it's all just weird. Like this happened during World War II, by the way. Like someone correct me if I'm wrong, but there was not a lot of involvement from Asia in World War II. Right? There was the American War in the Pacific Theater in World War II, which is well documented. But it's like China. There was a conflict between China and Japan during World War II, if I remember correctly. I want to say it was World War II. Like that whole region, like Burma, Thailand, Bangladesh, to my knowledge, they didn't really get involved directly in the war. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. Don't think Vietnam was like a very big player. This was well before the time of the Vietnam War, so I don't. I'm still not entirely sure again why he would have been in Burma. I don't know why he would have been shot down there as opposed to like over Europe or over Japan if he had been involved in the Pacific Theater. What they call the Pacific Theater of World War II. Okay, where was I? He was lowering himself to the ground when his dog tags caught on a vine, and because of his bad shoulder, he can neither support all his weight with one arm nor free the tags, and so he lost them. The chain cut his neck when the tags came off, and he landed on an old teakwood log that was hidden under the ferns and the dead palm fronds. The log rolled and he sprained his ankle. When he realized that in the monsoon weather he would never know east from west. That was when he discovered that his compass was gone. He rubbed himself with powder on his cut neck. While he had no idea where China was, he picked his way by moving through whatever was the least dense. In his way, after 3 days, he had the impression that the jungle was either thinning out or that he was getting better at picking his way through it. China was east of Wally, but Wally went south. China was up over the mountains, but Wally sought the valleys. Where Wally was, the valleys ran southwesterly. He was right about one thing: the jungle was thinning out. It was also getting warmer. Every night he climbed a tree and slept in its crotch. The large twisted trunks of the peepal tree Now all those giant wooden cables made the best couches for sleeping, but Wally wasn't the first creature to figure this out. One night at eye level in the crotch of a peepal tree next to him, a leopard was examining itself for ticks. Wally followed the leopard's example and discovered several. He gave up trying to remove the leeches. One day he saw a python, a small one about 15 feet. It was lying on a rock, swallowing something the approximate size and shape of a beagle. Any theories about why Wally's in Burma, please drop them in the comments. So I still don't know. Again, how involved was Burma in World War II? I don't think it was very involved at all. So I don't. Again, I still don't know why he was there. I don't know. Well, I guess there was a monkey, although you can remember if he'd seen any monkeys. He'd seen monkeys, of course, but he'd forgotten them. He had a fever. He tried to take his temperature, but the thermometer in his first leak was broken. The day he saw a tiger swim across the river was the day he began to notice the mosquitoes. The climate was changing. The river with the tiger in it had produced a broader valley. The forest was changing too. He caught a fish with his hands and it ate its liver raw. He cooked frogs as big as cats, but their legs were fishier than the frog legs he remembered. Perhaps it was the frog. Yeah, I'm sure that was it. He ate something that was the consistency of a mango and had no taste whatsoever. The fruit left a musty aftertaste. For a whole day he vomited and had chills. And the river where he'd seen the tiger turned into a big river. The monsoon water had a powerful current. Wally was encouraged to build a raft. He remembered the rafts he had engineered for travel on Drinkwater Lake. I had to think about how much harder it was to build a raft with bamboo and vines than with pitch pine and ropes. Straight boards and nails. How much heavier the green bamboo was, too. It didn't matter that the raft leaked. It barely floated, and if he needed portage, he knew he couldn't carry it. He noticed more mosquitoes, especially when the river broadened and the current slowed down. He just drifted. He had no idea how many days he drifted, or when he first knew for certain that he had a fever. About the time he saw the rice paddies and the water buffaloes, he would say later. One day he would remember waving to the women in the rice paddies. They looked so surprised to see him. When Wally saw the rice paddies, he must have known he'd gone the wrong way. He'd gone to the heart of Burnham, which is shaped like a kite with a long tail. He was much nearer to Mandalay than he was to China. The Japanese held Mandalay. Wally had a fever of 104. He just drifted. Sometimes he couldn't tell the river from the rice paddies. It was strange how both men and women wore long skirts, but only the men covered their. They wore what looked like baskets on their heads, and the baskets were wrapped with strips of brightly colored silk. And again, it's not like Burma was like on the way to Japan. It's completely out of the way. Or to the United States. So again, I still don't know why he would have been there. Women's heads were bare, but many of them put flowers in their hair. Both the men and women were with them. They seemed to be eating all the time, but they were just chewing betel nuts. Their teeth were stained, their lips made them appear as if they'd been drinking blood, but that was just the beetle juice. Beetle juice, beetle juice, beetle juice. That was about as much fun as we were going to get out of this chapter. So first they took Wally to like one story. Thatched houses on bamboo stilts. The families of outdoors on the porch. They gave him rice and tea and lots of things to curry. Once people went down, Wally ate pancake house, noodles and chicken, and sakin, cold fish balls. Those were the first words that his Burmese rescuers tried to teach him, but Wally misunderstood. Nyagas, I'm sorry, Sakin was the name of a man who carried him off the raft and had Wally's head steady while the man's wife fed Wally with their fingers. Fingers. She was wonderfully small and wore a sheer white blouse. Her husband touched the blouse and called it by name, trying to teach Wally more of his language. Angus, man said, and Wally thought that was his wife's name. He smelled like the inside of the thatch houses. She smelled like chintz and lemon rind. They were such a nice couple. Aksakin and Angus. Wally repeated their names out loud and smiled. They smiled back at him. Mr. Curried Fish Balls and his wife, Mrs. Blouse. She smelled as sticky sweet as frangipani. She smelled as citrus as bergamot. Now the fever had come, the stiffness in his neck and back. When the fever broke and he stopped vomiting, headaches were over, shaking chills were gone, and he wasn't even nauseous anymore, that was when he noticed the paralysis. At the time, it was a stiff paralysis, and with his lower and upper extremities. Spasticity, the Lurch would have called it. Wally's arms and legs stuck straight out, and he couldn't move them. He was delirious for 2 or 3 weeks, and when he tried to talk, his speech was thick and slow. He had trouble eating because of the tremors in his lips and tongue. He couldn't empty his bladder, and the natives had to catheterize him with a tiny rough bamboo shoot in order for him to urinate at all. They kept moving him. They always moved him over water. Once he saw elephants, they were dragging logs out of the forest. The surface of the water was forever interrupted with turtles and black snakes and water hyacinths and beetlejuice, red and the blood that traced place you're in. Yeah, just give us all the description, Rain. Just give us all of it, all the description. Hold nothing back. Now, Sakin, well, he asked. Angus, he asked. They'd gone, although the faces of his rescuers kept changing. They seemed to understand him. Let's come from a big family, Wally thought. I'm paralyzed, aren't I? He asked the small, pretty men and women who always smiled. One of the women watched him comb his hair. Her family watched while he stood drying in the sun. The blonde light looping into it as it dried. How would that impress them? They gave him a long shoe white blouse to wear. Angus, they said. Well, it's a present from her, he thought. When they covered his blonde hair with a dark wig, it was a waxy pigtail, and they tied the tie on top of his head and studded it with flowers. The children giggled. They shaved his face so close the skin burned. They shaved his legs below the knee, where his legs protruded from the long skirt they made him wear. The game was to make him a woman. The game was to make him safe, to make him blend in. His face was so pretty, it was easier for them to make him a woman than a man. The ideal Burmese woman had no breasts, has no breasts. It's a shame that they weren't more careful when they catheterized him. They were so careful about everything else. The bamboo shoot wasn't always clean. The catheter's roughness would hurt him and make him bleed. It was the dirtiness that gave him the infection. The infection would make him sterile. The epididymis will be large for him as the single closed tube in which the sperm matured after leaving the testicle. Epididymitis, an infection of that little tube, prevents sperm from reaching the sperm duct. In Wise case, the infection would permanently seal his tube. We correctly catheterized him. It was only the how that was wrong. He suffered urinary retention. His bladder was distended. No choice but to relieve him. At times, Ray would wonder if there wasn't an easier way, or if the bamboo was clean. What would he say to them? Angus, he would say. King, he would ask them, and I can relate all too well. Language is a complete pain in the neck. Why can we not have a universal language by this point? I don't know. Seriously, it is like downright heck trying to get around a foreign country by yourself with like limited language. Let me just say that. Like it's very difficult. Like you cannot get around basically. Because I mean even the taxi can't understand what you say without data. So it's like let's over here we hear bombing. Irrawaddy, they would explain. They were bombing the oil fields along the Irrawaddy. All he knew where he was. He used to bomb those fields too. Before he heard bombing, and is always disguised as a woman, he was taken to the doctor at Mandalay. His eyes were smarting because they rubbed a curry paste on his face to make him look brown. Close with those blue eyes and that patrician nose, he couldn't have fooled anyone. He saw many Japanese at Mandalay. Victor had trouble explaining to Wally what was wrong with him. He said the following in English: Japanese bee mosquito. I was bitten by a Japanese mosquito? Well, I said, but what's a bee mosquito? He wondered. No longer needed a catheter to pee, but the infection had done its damage. By the time he heard bombing of the lower body, paralysis left his upper extremities. He had full use of his arms again, and the spasticity had left his legs, although his legs were still paralyzed. It was a flaccid paralysis and not quite symmetrical. His left leg was more dead than his right. His bladder was okay, and except for the effects of curry, his bowels were okay too. What he could detect of his sexual function felt normal. No autonomic effects to encephalitis, Larch would explain to Candy and Homer Wells. What's that mean? Candy asked. It means that Wally can have normal sex life. Homer Wells, who didn't know about Wally's epididymis. Wally would have a normal sex life, but he wouldn't have an adequate sperm count. He would still have orgasm and ejaculation, since so much of the ejaculate is made in the prostate, which is quite a way downstream. He'd just never make his own baby. Okay. I don't know why life has to be simplified to that extent, but okay. So can you procreate? Yes, you're still useful then. If not, you're not. You're not to the great human race because you're not a baby making machine. You're not a breeder. At the time, none of them knew Wally had been sterilized. They knew only about encephalitis. Well, he cut it from the mosquitoes. It was called Japanese bee encephalitis, and it was quite common in Asia during the war. It is an arthropod-borne virus, or explained. Residual flaccid paralysis of the lower extremities was not a common effect of disease. It was well enough known to be documented. There are numerous challenges that occur in the tissue of the brain. The changes in the spinal cord look very much like polio. The incubation period is about a week long, and the acute disease process lasts only a week or 10 days. The recovery is very slow, with muscular tremors lasting sometimes for months. Considering that it comes from the birds, it's a big disease, what Bullard said to Nurse Edna and Nurse Angela. The mosquito picks up the virus from birds and transmits it to men and other large animals. Damn them. Wesley was so pretty and he lost so much weight, that's why they disguised him as a woman. The Japanese were both attracted to and intimidated by the Burmese women, especially women who had brass collars worn in spirals to stretch their necks. I think I've seen pictures of that. I mean, if you would like to see a picture of that, leave it in the comments. There was a woman and an emperor male made him untouchable. And looked Eurasian also made him an outcast. When monsoon season ended in October, they either traveled on the river at night or protected him from sun with an umbrella. Mercury beast. Got very tired of playing fish balls. Kept asking for them, or so the Burmese thought. That was all they gave him. And when he was delirious, he said Candy's name. One of the boatmen asked him about it. Candy? The boatman inquired politely. Probably they were in a sampan, while he lay under a roof of mats and watched the boatman sculling. Yes, well, he said. He meant like her, a good woman, a wife. The boatman nodded. At the next port on the river, Wally didn't know where. It might have been Yangon. They gave him another sheer white blouse. Candy, the man said. Wally thought he meant give it to Candy. He smiled. He just kept drifting. Sampan's sharp nose seemed to smell the way. It was a country of smells to Wally. It was a fragrant dream. Bullard could imagine Wally's journey. It was an either journey, of course. Elephants and oil fields, rice paddies and bombs falling. Dressed up as a woman, paralyzed from the waist down. He had been there. He had been everywhere. He had no trouble imagining Rangoon and water buffaloes. Every ether dream had its equivalent of bullets and underground agents smuggling American pilots across the Bay of Bengal. All the trip to Burma was a voyage Bullard had often undertaken. The white current odor of petunias was the odor of dung all the way. He flew while he crossed the Bay of Bengal in a small plane with a British pilot and a Sinhalese crew. Bullard had taken many such flights. You speak Sinhala? The friend asked Wally, who sat in the co-pilot seat. Pilot smelled of garlic and turmeric. I don't even know what Sinhala is, Wally said. He shut his eyes, he could see the white, waxy flowers of the wild lime bushes. He could still see the jungle. Principal language of Ceylon, my boy. Said. Pilot also smelled like tea. We're going to Ceylon? Wally asked. You keep a blonde in Burma, lad, the Englishman said. Don't you know Burma's full of nips? Wally would remember his native friends. Taught him to salam. A low bow, with the right hand on the forehead, always the right hand, they'd explain. It was a bow of salutation. When he was sick, someone had always stirred the punka for him. A punka is a large screen-shaped fan that is moved by a rope, pulled by a servant. Punka, Wally said to the English pilot. What's that, lad? Pilot asked. It's so hot, said Wally, who felt drowsy. They were flying at a very low altitude, and the little plane was an oven. A brief scent of sandalwood came through the stronger garlic in the pilot's sweat. 92 degrees American. Well, that's Rangoon, the pilot said. The pilot got a kick out of saying American instead of Fahrenheit, but Wally didn't notice. 92 degrees, Wally said. It felt like the first fact he could hang his hat on, as they say in Maine. What happened to the legs? The Englishman asked clumsily. He's being mosquito, Wally explained. The British pilot looked very grave. He thought the word meant a plane. The Japanese bee mosquito was the name of the fighter plane that shot Wally's plane down. I don't know that one, lad, I admitted Wally. I'd seen them all, but you can't trust the nips. Some of these crew had slathered themselves with coconut oil and were wearing sarongs and long collar shirts. Two of them were eating something, and one of them was screeching into the radio. Pilot said something sharply to the radio man, who instantly lowered his voice. Sinhala is an awful language, the pilot confided to Wally. Sounds like it's fucking. When Wally didn't respond to his humor, the Englishman asked him if he'd ever been to Ceylon. Wally didn't answer, and Wally seemed to be daydreaming. The Englishman said, We're not going to catch the swift overseas and bloody rubber plantations. We can use the blue tea. You had to do it, all right. How bloody ever. How want to be independent. Movement said. 92 degrees. Somebody says, smiling. He's all delirious. He's like, 92 degrees. Let's try to relax, lad. Cloud said. Don't worry, you'll be fine soon. He tasted cinnamon when he burped. When he shut his eyes, he saw African marigolds come out like stars. Suddenly, the three Sinhalese began to speak at once. First, the radio would say something, then the three of them would speak in unison. Bloody Buddhists, all of them, the pilot explained. They even play on the bloody radio. So long, the Englishman said. Two-thirds tea and one-third rubber and air. He smelled something at the Sinhalese who lowered their voices. He yelled something at them. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, shortly before sighting Ceylon, the pilot was worried about the aircraft in his vicinity. Right now, damn you, he said to the Sinhalese, who were all asleep. That Japanese blue mosquito, the Englishman said to Wally. What does it look like? He asked. Or did it get you from behind? Well, all I would say was 92 degrees. The war Ceylon would become an independent nation. 24 years after that, the country would change its name to Sri Lanka. All Wally would remember was how hot it had been. In a way, his parachute had never touched down. In a way, he'd remained over Burma for 10 months, just floating there. All Wally would remember his own story would never make as much sense as an ether frolic, and how he would survive the war, slow, paralyzed. Clerk's Placid had already been dreamed the big dot. It was 34 degrees in St. Cloud's when Humboldt went to the railroad station and dictated a telegram to Olive to the station master. Homer could not have phoned her and lied to her that directly. Hadn't Olive telegrammed them? Must have had reasons for not wanting to talk on the phone. It was with the almost certain feeling that Ray and Olive knew everything that Homer and Kimmy were doing, and Homer dictated his telegram to Olive. Correcting a polite formality is faint as a suspicion. A suspicion that could be proven only impolitely, and Homer was right. God bless you and Wally. Stop. When will we see him? Stop. Candy and I home soon. Stop. I've adopted a baby boy. Stop. Love Homer. Don't let her know. Otherwise, big drama will ensue. You're going to adopt somebody, ain't you? Postmaster asked. Right, said Homer Wells. It's like his trademark. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, right. And he telephoned her father. It's going to be weeks or maybe months before they can move him, Ray told her. He's got to gain some weight before he can travel so far, and there's probably going to be tests they got to do. There's still a war on, don't forget. The end of her phone. At her end of the phone, Candy just cried and cried. Just tell me how you were doing, darling. Ray Kendall said that was when she could have told him that she just had Homer's baby. But what she said was, Homer died to one of the orphans. After a pause, Raymond Kendall said, just one of them? He's adopted a baby boy, Candy said. Of course, I helped too. We kind of adopted the baby together. You have, Ray Kendall said. His name is Angel, Candy said. Bless his heart, Ray said. Bless you both too. Candy cried some more. Adopted, huh? Ray said, daughter. Yes, said Candy, kind of one of the orphans. She quit breastfeeding, and nurse had now introduced her to the device for pumping her breasts. That is Wally's dad, right? No, no, no. That's her dad. So they're not just lying to his mom; they're lying to her dad too. Tisk tisk, shame, shame, shame for shame. Angel disliked his conversion to formula milk. For a few days, he displayed a cranky temperament. Candy's display became cranky temperament. Homer observed that the TV show moved near the grown black that punch you turn her heart and she snapped at him. Yeah, just give nothing back to John Irving, nothing back. We need to know every last detail, everything that happens. Every part of her body and every state and condition that it was in. Leave nothing out. Nothing. For God's sake, who's going to see her at PBK or not, except you, Candy asked. Homer showed signs of strain too. He was impatient with Dr. Larcher's suggestion that Homer's future lay in the medical profession. Larcher insisted on giving Homer a brand new copy of Gray's Anatomy. He also gave him Standard Greenhill's Office Gynecology and the British masterpiece Diseases of Women. Jesus Christ, I'm the father. I'm going to be an apple farmer. Yeah, I think we're getting close. Okay, it looks like I'm going to have to take a bathroom break. Goodbye, I'll be right back. 7 pages remain. Here be. 7 pages, man. 7 pages. And again, it's because as talented as Irving was, he just did not know how to get to the point. He just would keep rambling on and on like old people do. It's like, dude, just get to the freaking point, please. We don't need to know every little thing that happens. Dang, it's so annoying. And yeah, we still have 7 more pages to go. And here we go again. You have near perfect obstetrical procedure, Larch told him. You just need a little more of the gynecological, and the pediatric, of course. Maybe I'll end up a lobster man, Homer said. I'll send you a subscription to the New England Journal of Medicine, Dr. Larch said. Angina and SGNO. You're the doctor, said Homer Wells tiredly. He doesn't want to be a freaking doctor. Just get it into your freaking head, Larch. How do you feel? Candy asked Homer. Like an orphan, Homer said. They held each other tightly, but they did not make love. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. How do you feel? Homer asked. Won't know until I see him, Candy said honestly. What will you know then? Homer asked. If I love him or you or both of you, she said, or else I won't know any more than I know it. It's always wait and see, isn't it? Homer asked. You don't expect me to tell him anything when he's still over there, do you? Candy asked. No, of course I don't expect that, he said softly. She held him tighter. She began to cry again. Oh, Homer, she said, how can you weigh only 105 pounds? Sure, he'll gain some weight, Homer said, but his entire body shriveled suddenly. Wally's body had been so strong. Homer remembered the first time Wally had taken him to the ocean. The surf had been unusually rough, and Wally had warned him about the undertow. Wally had taken him by the hand and shown him how to duck under the waves and how to ride them. They'd walked along the beach for an hour, undistracted by Candy. She had been Candy. Oh, how the times have changed. I don't understand all this stupid line down in the sun, Wally told Homer, who agreed. You're doing something in the sun and you pick up a little color, you're doing something else, but you're doing something. That's the main thing. They're picking up shells and stones. The beachcomber searched for specimens. Homer was immediately impressed with the smoothness of the stones and the broken pieces of shell. The water and the sand had softened them. This is a very experienced piece, Wally had said, handing Homer an especially warm bit of shell. It had no edges. Experienced, Homer had said. Just in a word, these chapters are like laborious. That's why I have to do it in 2 parts. Like looking back, like I don't know how I did an entire chapter in one sitting. Like, geez, Louise, man, this book. It's like, fudge, man. They're just freaking long, man. They are long. Experienced, Homer had said. After that, Wally had said, and this is a Willie Stone, exhibiting an old smooth one. Like, there are 2 main things that happen in this chapter so far. In like over 60 pages. Like, Angel Wells is born. Angel Wells is born, and Wally survived. But those are the 2 main things that happen. And it took 60 some odd pages to say that. So dumb. So dumb. Anyway. Homer thought that his desire for candy had changed everything, even the natural process of grinding the smooth stones and shells. If he and Wally went back to the beach, would they still be beachcombers, or was it inevitable that the love of a woman would alter even the most commonplace experiences together? Was he my friend for 5 minutes, one Homer Wells, my rival for the rest of my life? One questioner said, and with the care of the hillside orchard. He explained that the wire mesh sleeves around the trees could not be wrapped so tightly that they didn't permit the trees to grow. Also not so loosely that the mice could girdle the trees. Showed her how to spot the tunnels of the pine mice who ate the roots. Everyone kissed Candy goodbye, even Wilbur Larch, who, when he reached to shake Homer's hand, appeared embarrassed, and Homer brushed past his hand and hugged him, kissed him on his leathery neck. Their sadness sobbed the most freely. As soon as the pickup truck rolled past the girls' division, Wilbur Larch closed himself in the dispensary. Sunday, so Remy Kendall was at work on his homemade torpedo when Homer brought Candy home. Candy told Homer that he could not face seeing Olive until the next morning, but she was gripped by an unforeseen panic when Homer drove off with Angel. Although her milk was gone, she knew she would still wake up to her baby's clock, even though it would be Homer alone who was hearing the actual cries. How many nights had it been since she had slept alone? She would tell Homer the next day, "We got to find a way to share him. I mean, even before we tell Olive, not to mention Wally, we both take care of him. We have to both be with him. I just miss him too much." "I miss you," Homer Wells told her. He was an orphan who had a family for less than a month of his life, and he was not prepared to not have a family again. He and Angel arrived at Ocean View. Olive greeted Homer as if she were his mother. She threw her arms around him and kissed him and wept. "Show me that baby. Oh, he's darling," she cried. "Whatever possessed you? You're young. You're all alone." Little does she know that it's not her grandson. Although I guess she knows that too, right? She does know that. Because they've been telling her it's adopted. I'm pretty sure. The baby was all alone too, Homer mumbled. "Can't you help me with him?" "Of course," Olive said. "I'll help you too." She carried Angel to Wally's room, where Homer was surprised to see a crib and more baby things. For just one baby, then could have been collected in a thorough search of both the boys and girls divisions in St. Cloud's. An army of bottles for the formula awaited Homer in the kitchen. Olive had even bought a special pot for sterilizing the nipples. In the linen closet, there were more diapers than there were pillowcases and sheets and towels. For the first time in his life, Homer felt that he had been adopted. To his horror, he saw that Olive loved him. "You and Angel should have Wally's room," Olive said. "I've obviously been busy planning. Wally won't be able to climb upstairs, so I'm having the dining room made into a bedroom. You can always eat in the kitchen, and the dining room has that terrace for when the weather's nice. Having a ramp built from the terrace to the patio around the pool for the wheelchair." As Homer held her while she cried, a new guilt surrounded him like the nightfall. That ever new remorse that Mr. Rochester told Jane Eyre to dread. Always in his life. Second week of May, Ruth Kate Combe and Homer worked alongside each other, putting the bees out in the orchards. It was the start of blossom time the night before Mother's Day. When they put out the hives, everyone remembered Mother's Day that year. No one forgot Olive. The house was full of their presents and lots of apple blossoms. Some of the work who even gave Homer a Mother's Day present. He thought it was so funny that he'd adopted a baby. "Just imagine you with your very own baby," was the way Big Bad Top put it. In the Apple Mart, when they were given the display tables of fresh coated paint, two babies on display, Angel Rose and Florence and Meaning Head's Burley Pete. It looked like a potato compared to Angel Rose, which is to say that his disposition was entirely bland and that he had no apparent bones in his face. Less than 5 pages, y'all. Let's get it. Let's get it. Drink water. 5 pages, man. 5 pages. Remember, your angel is an angel, Florence Hyde would say, and my Pete's a Pete. The Mart women teased him endlessly. Homer just smiled. David Pettigrew was especially interested in handling Angel Wells. She looked intently into the baby's face for the longest time before announcing that she was sure the baby was going to look just like Homer. Only more aristocratic, she guessed. Squeeze Louise said the baby was too precious for words. When Homer was out in the field, either Olive or one of the Apple Mart women looked after Angel, but most of the time Candy looked after her baby. "We kind of adopted them together," she'd explain. So often Olive said Candy was as much of a mother to that child as Homer was, and Olive, therefore, as a kind of a joke, gave Candy a Mother's Day present too. All the while the bees did their work, carrying pollen from the frying pan to be talked to. Candy looked between the cobwebs that housed the hives. One morning on the corner of the newspaper, Homer Wells saw Olive's "What's a remarkable day's headlines, and none of which, only one of which shown when he prompted Olive to respond. Somehow Homer thought the remark was written to him, in pallor of dishonesty, Olive had written. One night Candy heard her Ray, her bedroom light was out, and she heard her father say, "It's not wrong, but it's not right." At first she thought he was on the telephone. After she put back to sleep, she sat for the opening and Susan woke her up again. She realized Ray had been sitting in her room with her, addressing her in her sleep in the darkness. Some of the nights in blossom time, Candy would say to Homer, "You're an overworked father." "Isn't he?" Olive would say admiringly. "I'm going to take this kid off her hands for the night," Candy would say, and Homer would smile through the tension of these exchanges. He would wake up alone in Wally's room. anticipation of Angel needing his bottle. He could imagine Raymond Kendall getting up to heat the formula and Candy being in her bed with the bottle of formula in as neat and an approximation of correct angle for breast as could arrange it. This is Ray's grandson. Ray's torpedo parts were stolen from Fury Navy Yard, but only Candy knew that's how he got them, but only Candy criticized Ray for it. I've caught more mistakes in the way they do things than they know things to do, Ray said. Not like they could catch me. Again, there's just so many characters. I could see why this would make a good movie, but like it is an agonizing read aloud. There's just too many characters. What's it for anyway? Candy asked her father. I don't like there being a bomb here, especially when there's a baby in the house. Well, when I got the torpedo, Ray explained, I didn't know about the baby. And actually, the torpedo came before the baby, right? Well, you know now. He said, why don't you fire at something? It's something far away. When it's ready, I'll fire it, Ray said. What are you going to fire at? Or asked Raymond Kendall. I don't know, Ray said. Go to the Haven Club the next time they tell me I spoiled their view. I like not knowing what you're doing something for, Candy told her father when they were alone. It's like this, Ray said slowly. I'll tell you what it's like. A torpedo. It's like Wally coming home. You know he's coming. You can't calculate the damage. Candy asked Homer for an interpretation of Ray's meaning. He's not telling you anything, Homer said. He's pushing. He wants you to tell him. Suppose it all just goes on the way it is, Candy asked. Back to made love in the side house, which had not been cleaned for use in the harvest. Made love at Homer Wells. Yes, she said. Yes, she said. Suppose that we wait and we wait. How long do we wait? She asked him. After a while, suppose it gets easier to wait than to tell. We have to tell sometime, said Homer Wells. When? Candy asked. When Wally comes home, Homer said. Are they going to plan on telling him the truth? No. He comes home paralyzed and weighing less than one that way. And he said, is that when we sprung it on him? She asked. The things you can't ease into, wondered Homer Wells. Scalpel, he remembered, has a certain heft. One does not need to press on it. It seems to cut it on its own. But one does not need to take charge of it in a certain way. When one takes it up, one has to move it. Scalpel does not require the authority of force, but it demands of the reasonable authority of movement. We have to know where we're going, said Homer Wells. But what if we don't know? Candy asked. What if we know then we want to stay? What if we wait and wait? Do you mean we won't ever know if you love him or me? Asked her. Maybe all confused by how much he's going to need me, Candy said. Homer put his hand on her, where her pubic hair had grown back almost exactly as it was. You don't think I'll need you too? He asked her. She rubbed her other hip, turning her back to him, but at the same time taking his hand from where he touched her and clamping his hand to her breast. We will have to wait and see, she said. At a certain point, I won't wait, said Homer Wells. What point is that? Candy asked. Because his hand was on her breast, he could feel her holding her breath. When Angel's old enough to either know his emotion or know who his parents are, Homer said. That's the point. I won't have to Angel to think he's adopted. I won't have him not knowing who his mother and father are. I'm not worried about Angel, Candy said. Angel will get lots of love. I'm worried about you and me. And Wally, Homer said, will go crazy, Candy said. We won't go crazy, Homer said. We gotta take care of Angel and make him feel loved. What if I don't feel loved or you don't? What then? Candy asked him. Wait until then, said Homer Wells. We'll just wait and see, he said, almost with vengeance. The spring breeze. Yeah, we almost thought we were done, but we had 2 more pages. Spring breeze blew over them, wearing it over the sickly sweet stench of rotten apples. The smell had an almost ammonia power that so overwhelming was that he released Candy's breast and he covered his mouth and nose with his hand. It was not until the summer when Candy first heard directly from Wally. She got an actual letter. The first communication from him since he'd been shot down a year ago. Wally spent 6 weeks in Mount Lavinia Hospital in Ceylon. He not wanted to move him from there until he gained 15 pounds, until his muscle tremors had ceased and his speech had lost the daydreaming vacantness of malnutrition. He wrote the letter from another hospital in New Delhi. After a month in India, he had gained an additional 10 pounds. He said that he learned to put cinnamon in his tea and that the slap of sandals was nearly constant in the hospital. They were promising him that they would allow him to commence the long trip home when he weighed 140 pounds and when he had mastered a few basic exercises that were essential for rehabilitation. He couldn't describe the route of his proposed voyage home because of the censors. Wally hoped that the censors would understand, in the light of his paralysis, that it was necessary for him to say something about his perfectly normal sexual function. The censor had allowed him to pass. Wally still didn't know if it was sterile. He knew he had a urinary tract infection and that the infection was gone. And how's Homer? How I miss him, Wally wrote. That was not the part of the letter that devastated Candy. And he was so devastated by the beginning of the letter that the rest of the letter was simply continuing devastation to her. I'm so afraid that you won't want to marry a cripple, Wally began. Her single blood tugged into sleep into wakefulness by the tide. Candy stared at the picture of her mother on the night table. She would have liked a mother to talk to at the moment, and perhaps because she had no memory of her mother, she remembered the first night she had arrived at the orphanage. After Larch had been reading the boys from Great Expectations, Candy would never forget the line that she and Homer had walked in on. I awoke without having parted in my sleep, with the perception of my wretchedness, when Larch had read it aloud. The Dr. Larch had predetermined that he would end the evening's reading with that line, or else he had only noticed Candy and Homer Wells in the open doorway. The harsh hall light, a naked bulb, formed a kind of institutional halo over their heads, and had lost its place in the book, causing him spurred the moment to stop reading. For whatever reason, perception of wretchedness had been Candy's introduction to St. Cloud's, the beginning and end of her bedtime story. I think it's hard to say for me personally. That's the end of chapter 9, by the way. What character I hate or dislike more, Melanie or Candy? I think I dislike Candy more. She's very like superficial, very. I don't know if I want to say wish-washy, but she doesn't mean what she says. She says wait and see, but she doesn't wait. So yeah, waiting is not her strong suit. She had an abortion. She had a kid with Homer Wells. Like waiting is not her strong suit for Candy. Birth control is not her thing either. Whereas I prefer Melanie as a character because she's got that whole like haunted past thing going on, and so her demeanor character is it's more easily explained by her past. Candy just seems more like a carpe diem, live in the moment kind of girl, and part of the reason why the abortion debate is even a thing. People who just like rush in, they just do stuff, they just have fun, and then they worry about the consequences later. And I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh in my criticism, but I just find her character annoying, actually. Like very, very annoying. Homer, I mean, I think he started off fine when he was reading to the boys division, but it's like now I think as time has gone on, as it's gone on, he's more self-centered, he's more concerned about himself, like he sees himself as a father. And when he returned, like I think he's like trying to fill in, but I think he's so much more focused now on the relationship between himself and Candy. He's less focused on helping the orphans, in my uh, understanding, in my interpretation. And there are some characters that are relatively static, like Nurse Angela, Nurse Edna. I'd say they're the characters that have the least change or growth in the novel. Like it seems like they don't really change all that much at all. Really, they serve like one function in the story and in the orphanage. Like they have one job. Dr. Larch, Dr. Larch experienced a lot of change. Like he is old now. You can tell he's kind of he's expecting the end, right? Like we know Robert Larch, his days are numbered. He's definitely getting older, and I think Robert Larch is I think my favorite character in the book. Okay, all right, that should do it for today's episode. That will do it for Cider House Rules this week. I will pick it up next Monday with chapter 10. And there are two chapters remaining, chapter 10 and chapter 11. I will break the chapters into two parts as I have done. And so I will have 4 additional episodes of Cider House Rules Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, or plan to, anyway. And I will do a recap on Monday and then another recap on Wednesday, similar to as I've done. And then if there's enough demand, Let me put it this way: if there is more than 5 concurrent viewers, right now it's telling me 0. If there's more than 5, I will plan on having a discussion and Q&A bonus episode on Friday of next week. If I have 0 viewers, if I get shadow banned, whatever, next Thursday will be the final episode of Cider House Rules. And to be frank with you all, like I'm just ready to move on from the book. It's a very fun read. It's not a fun read at all, in my opinion. I mean, it's an interesting story, right? But it's just not a fun read. All right, if you are on TikTok, please remember to support the show, like, comment, follow. If you have the means and willingness to donate, Venmo is Stormer Show, STORMERSHOW. Thank you for any and all support that the show receives. Thank you if you choose to support me on YouTube. Like, comment, share, subscribe, donate is the same. Venmo Stormer Show. Thank you all for watching. Have a good night. I've been your host, Stormer Show, signing out and signing off. Sleep tight. Have a good night.